Okay, good morning, Shavua Tov. Okay, this morning we're going to try, in the 50 minutes or so we have, to do Lecha Dodi. There's Sidurim over there. I apologize. Okay, we're going to try to do Lecha Dodi in this amount of time, and there are three things I want to do. I want to give a little background to this prayer and go through the content of the prayer. So that's going to be the first thing it's going to do, and that's going to take the most amount of time this morning. After that, I want to explain why the mystics, or why many people, many rabbis thought that it made sense to put this poem between 29, the last one about the weekdays that has God's name 18 times and talks about the strong voices of God 7 times for the 7 brachos of Shabbat, and then Mizmor Shilam Shabbat, the psalm for Saturday, the psalm for Shabbat. So why did they interrupt the natural flow between those two poems, which seem to connect to each other, with this long interruption? So I'm going to explain why they did that, and then I'm going to tell you why I think they're wrong. Okay. This poem is amazing on so many levels. When I say amazing, it's amazing because it's a beautiful poem. I mean, that's the beginning of it. It's a beautiful, beautiful poem. This is basically the only rabbinic poem that, post, the year 1000 or something, that made it into the prayer book. There's nothing else as late as this, nothing even close. The thing before this that got into the Siddur on a regular basis, and that's not even part of the davening, is like Yigdal is from the 13th century. But this is from the 16th century, and Yigdal doesn't even count. It's not really part of davening. You know what I mean? This really became part of davening, even though it was written in the 1500s. That's amazing that somebody in Tzfat would write a poem sometime in the mid-1500s, and everybody in the world, I don't care if you live in Yemen or you live in northern Russia, no matter where the Jews were, the only Jewish group that didn't get this poem, of course, was the Ethiopians. But they were too isolated. They missed a lot. They missed the Gemara. So of course they're going to miss this poem. But it's just amazing. And the magic of this poem to get into prayer books throughout the world was based upon technology. And the technology, of course, was the printing press. The first Siddur that has the poem in it was in 1584. That's also the year that the author of the poem died. The author of the poem is Rabbi Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz. And we're going to see his name. There's an acrostic in the poem. Shlomo Halevi is the first letter of the different batim, the different stanzas of the poem. Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz was born in Turkey around 1505 from parents that had left Spain in 1492, and Baruch Hashem made it to Turkey so they could survive. And he lived in Turkey till around 1530. It's around 1530, and then moved to Tzfat together with his close friend Rabbi Yosef Karo. They lived together in Smyrna. That's not where he was born. He was probably born in Saloniki. They moved from Smyrna to Tzfat in 1529, 1530, and they became, the center of the community. Reb Shlomo Alkabetz had a brother-in-law. His brother-in-law is very important, and I'm sorry, many of you aren't going to recognize the name. His brother-in-law was the Ramak, Reb Moshe Cordovera. Reb Moshe Cordovera was one of the great mystics, but he was so overshadowed by the Ari that most people that don't really study Kabbalah don't know about him. And he was the head of the Kabbalistic movement in Tzfat, and he was the brother-in-law of Shlomo Alkabetz, and he encouraged Rabbi Alkabetz in his study. Well, first Shlomo Alkabetz taught him. He was older. First, he taught the Ramak, and then the Ramak becomes his leader, and he pushes him to write more poetry and whatever. And it's probably the Ramak that had the poem, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero had the poem become part of what we do on Friday night. Now, I just want to remind you, these gentlemen in Tzfat in the 1550s and the 1560s, that's before the Ari got there. The Ari got there in 1570. These gentlemen invented Kabbalat Shabbat. Before they did their thing, Kabbalat Shabbat was just saying Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat. They put together this whole process, and part of the process was saying this poem. And the process of saying this poem is based on a Gemara. The Gemara is in Shabbat, Daf Kuf Yud Tet Amud Aleph, and the Gemara says the following thing: Reb Chanina would dress nicely for Kabbalat Shabbat, for accepting Shabbat, and say, "Come, let us greet the Shabbat queen." And of course, that's the end of the poem. Then it goes on. Rav Yanai would say, "Come, O bride, come, O bride." So there was an argument already in the Gemara, and that argument continues between Nusach Ashkenaz and Nusach Sfarad. Do we call Shabbat a queen or a bride? And both. And we end up thinking this is both. But he said, "Come, let us greet." And that's what they did in Tzfat. This poem was originally not recited here. And I would prefer, if we went back to this custom, they used to go outside. They used to go outside to recite this poem. And when they finished the poem, they'd go into the shul and do Kabbalat Shabbat, and bringing Shabbat with them. They were all white. And it must have been just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we actually know where it was that they used to recite it. It was at that point outside Tzfat. Any of you know there's the two Ari synagogues, the Ari Ashkenaz and the Ari Sfarad that's in the middle of Tzfat? Well, that was the edge of Tzfat in the 1500s. It was much smaller. And so just above it was a fruit tree area. And they used to go into that apple tree orchard to recite this poem and to sing and to dance. And from there, you get an amazing view of the sun setting over Har Meron, the mountain of Meron opposite them on the west. And they would sing the song as they were, seeing the sun set and then bringing Shabbat with them into Shul. And then they said this. However, that's not the way it was in the first Siddur. The first Siddur that printed it was in 1584, and it put it here because, look, they could do it in Tzfat, but we know in Europe you couldn't go outside and sing and dance and do many places. The Gentiles wouldn't be happy with the Jews praying in the streets, right? So they put it into the middle, and we'll see why they put it here. Okay. So there are three major sources for the material in the poem. And the first major source right away is Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala Pnei Shabbat Nikabala. Lecha Dodi, come my beloved. Now this term, Lecha Dodi, appears in Shir HaShirim, the great love romantic poem of Shlomo HaMelech, which is a metaphor for the love between the Jewish people and God. And this is in Perek Zion Pasuk Yud Bet, chapter 7, verse 12. The phrase Lecha Dodi appears. And so that's the first inspiration for Reb Shlomo Alkabetz was Shir HaShirim, which in this poem presents us with an ambiguity. Who are we in love with? Shabbat, Hashem. In other words, if it's Shabbat, the Jewish nation is like the husband, right? And Shabbat is the queen or the bride. If it's with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is
the husband, and we're, the bride. Okay? And of course it's both. Of course it's both. It goes in both directions. We have a love affair with both. And now comes the first two paragraphs. The first two paragraphs are based upon, is the second inspiration for the poem, comes from Matan Torah, from the giving of the Torah. And this is the first inkling we have of why they put the poem here. If you go back one poem to chapter 29, it talks about the voice of God being unbelievably powerful. And we praise and glorify and are in awe of God because of the power manifest in God's call, a voice that breaks the cedars of Lebanon, smashes mountains, right? Now, we said that may mean an earthquake, because earthquakes make these huge sounds. It doesn't make a difference. But there's this idea that the voice of God is something magnificent, and that's how we get ready for Shabbat, that we recognize how powerful God is. Well, we do that here too. In other words, the power of God's voice is not only powerful, it's also subtle and majestic and miraculous. And what do I mean by miraculous? We're praising the voice of God because God did something amazing on the first Shabbat celebrated by the Jewish people. According to although it's a machloket, most people paskin, the first Shabbat celebrated by the Jewish people was Matan Torah. And God said, Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. There are two versions of the Ten Commandments. And in one it says Shamor, guard, observe. The other one says Zachor, remember. And we believe that the two versions, God's miraculous voice said them both, b'dibur echad, simultaneously, something we can't do. But even more important than God could say the two simultaneously, I was always impressed with ventriloquists that could drink and talk at the same time. Ever see that like drinking and they're doing a voice at the same time? I was always impressed with that. This is like that kind of amazing thing. But what made it even more amazing, is Hishmiyanu Kel HaMiyuchad. God allowed us to hear it. There's God saying Shamor and Zachor. Now, some of you may like movies as much as I do, but I doubt it. The first time that somebody sang with themselves in the history of song was Peggy Lee in Lady and the Tramp, and she played the voices of both of the Siamese twins. We are Siamese, if you please. So what they did was she sang the song, and then she sang it again with herself. She sang it again with herself. And lahavdil, a lot of havdalot, okay? This is what happened with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't need, sound engineers. But the amazing thing is God made it so we could understand it. So just like Psalm 29 talks about the amazing nature of God's call, this poem picks up that theme. The amazing nature of God's call, voice. The miraculous nature of God's ability to communicate in ways that are unique. Okay, the next line, which is about, again, Shabbat. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'neilcha. Towards Shabbat, we go and we go. In other words, why we go and we go? Because we're always moving towards Shabbat. It's Sunday morning, and I already feel like saying, hang in there, Shabbos is coming, you know what I mean? Okay? Once you finish cleaning up from Shabbos, I'm exhausted. I need another Shabbos. But it's not as so. Lechu v'neilcha means in the short term now. But neilcha, we are always. Shabbat is what we're always going for, and of course, it represents two different aspects of Shabbat. There's the Shabbat of Olam Hazeh, and there's the Shabbat of Olam Haba, this worldly, and then the magical Shabbat in the world to come. Yom Shekulo Shabbat, when every day is going to be Shabbos. I accomplished that by retiring. But okay, it's not the same. But anyways, it's got like two aspects of Shabbat going on in it. Okay? But at the end of this, look at Sof Ma'aseh B'Machshava Techila. If you remember, when you look at Psalm 92, we talk about, the line goes, Ma'od Amku Machshavotecha. God, your plans are subtle. Your plans are profound. Your plans are deep. So in other words, the previous paragraph refers to Psalm 29, the Psalm before. This paragraph is referencing the next Psalm, 92, which is talking about Sof Ma'aseh B'Machshava Techila. In what way is God's thought, or our God's thought profound? When God starts something, he knows exactly what it's going to look like at the end. It's all perfectly planned out, it's as opposed to us, man plans, God laughs. That's how we do things, right? But God, it's exactly the way Hashem wanted it. It's exactly the way Hashem wanted it to turn out. And that's the explanation in the poem for the deepest idea in Psalm 92. So the first paragraph, Psalm 29. Second paragraph, Psalm 92. And again, that's why some people want to put it, I'm sorry, we're doing Lecha Dodi, and different Sidurim have different pages. I apologize.
156.
Okay. I'm sorry, when I was giving them out, I saw they were all gray, and I thought they were the same pagination, but they're not. Now comes 4 paragraphs that are a problem. Now, the inspiration for these 4 paragraphs is the book of Yeshayahu. The inspiration, so we've got Lecha Dodi is Shir Shirim. These first 2 paragraphs is Matan Torah. And now we leave that area of Shabbat and we talk about Mikdash Melech Ir Melucha. Coming to Shabbos is like doing what? Coming to the Beit HaMikdash. And so these 4 paragraphs, again, based on verses in Yeshayahu, toward the end, of course. In other words, Yeshayahu basically has 2 parts to it. What was the 2 authors? I'm definitely not getting involved in that. But the second half of it is this optimistic viewpoint for the future. Well, the first half is this pessimistic, short-term view of the world. Okay? Okay. Just one trivia note before we leave this paragraph, because I'm not as interested in this paragraph, but one point of trivia. See the third line in that third paragraph? It says, Rav Loch Shevet Be'emek HaBacha. You've dwelled long enough in the vale of tears. So the Gemara asks, first the Midrash, and then it's repeated in the Gemara, asks, what is the valley of tears? Anyone want to guess what valley it is? No. Oh, no, it really means the Galut. But they applied it to a specific place in Eretz Yisrael. No, what you said is correct.
Oh, that's okay.
But they wanted to make it, concrete. Yeah. Do you know what the veil of tears is? Anyone want to guess? Excellent. Emek Rifa'im. I don't know. I've never cried on Emek Rifa'im. Oh, the price glasses can make you cry. I guess you're right. Yeah, very good. So, but Emek Riphaim, what was a scary place, because the Riphaim weren't medical doctors. They were like witch doctors, and they were enemies of the Jewish people. And Riphaim, which gives the words for ghosts or whatever, but the word comes into modern Hebrew as doctors, because the original doctors were medicine men and shaman, and the first doctors were magician type things. We have records from the Austro-Hungarian Empire from the 1700s, and they have a large list of Balei Shem, including the Baal Shem Tov. Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov is on the list. And they had tax exemptions. You know why? No, they were medical personnel. These people, these miracle men, were viewed by the government. They didn't have enough doctors to send them around the country. So they said, "Oh, okay, go to your rabbi. He'll cure you." It's interesting. It's interesting that they were recognized as medical men. It's just a fascinating idea. Okay. The next paragraph. Hitna'ari me afar kumi. Shake yourself off. Get up from the dust. And that verse is, if you want to look up later and see the context of it, it's Isaiah 52:2. Chapter 52, verse 2. That's a beautiful image. In the previous paragraph, too long have you been sitting in the dust and the dirt and the filth, crying. Now get up. Shake yourself off. It's time to start moving toward Yerushalayim again. Okay? Leave she big day tifar techami. Get yourself dressed in beautiful garments. Now, if you remember last week, we talked about the concept of lavush. Lavush or clothing that reveals who you are. So in other words, us sitting in the dust in rags and torn clothes, that's not us. That's a beged. That's hiding the real us. The real us is when we get ourselves up, dust off, and put on the beautiful clothes to go to the Beit HaMikdash. That's who the Jews really are. And that's the image here. And of course, that image is not only here, but that's the image of going from Friday to Shabbat. We're going to get back to that idea. Now comes, I worked in Atlantic City for 4 years. I taught, I'm sorry?
Dealer?
No, I taught, actually Margate. I taught in a, Margate. Sure. Lucy the Margate Elephant. So anyways, I taught there for 4 years, and my boss was Mordechai Weiss, and that's Avi Weiss's brother. And wonderful. He lives here in Eretz Yisrael now, and he's just a wonderful person. His wife loved this line so much, she wrote that famous song, Hitoriri, Hitoriri. So all the kids used to sing that in the school every Friday. It was like wonderful, And this is a wonderful thing. Hitoriri. Wake up! Get yourself going. Start moving. It's enough with the lethargy. Enough with And that's just a beautiful idea. And that is chapter 51, verse 17 of Isaiah. Again, if you want to look it up later and see context. And again, but this idea of kumi, me afar kumi, and here kumi ori. It's, in other words, it's time that we stood up and got up. What's the difference between being like down and getting up? It's the difference between being an animal and a human. Become a human again. Kumi, stand up, full. When we
Hind legs.
When we ask, or we mention the blessings in Sefer Vayikra at the end in Bechukotai, it says what we want to walk with Hashem bekomimiut. Kumi. We want to be able to stand straight. And of course we know that Israelis, don't call the 48 war. They don't call it the War of Independence like we do in English for some reason. They tend to call it Milchemet HaKomimiyut. It's the war that got us to stand up straight again. It made us, it's a wonderful idea. And that's being emphasized in these two paragraphs. And now the next paragraph, it says, Lo tevoshi velo tikalmi. No longer should you be embarrassed. No longer should you be ashamed. Years ago, they when they opened up, I think it's in the 80s, the Museum of the Diaspora in Tel Aviv. It was a really nice museum. I mean, it's not as, it's been bypassed by so many, nice museums there. But one of the things that was fascinating was they showed how in the Middle Ages the Christians portrayed Jews. And every portrayal, and there were, mock-ups of famous statues and paintings that were in castles and mostly cathedrals in Europe. The cathedrals of Europe, the artwork in them was like an educational device. They would learn their Bible stories and their history from that. And every version of the Jews they're disgusting. They're gross. They're embarrassed. They're in the dust. They're in the dirt. And now it's saying, Lo tevoshiv lo tikolmi. No more embarrassment. No more shame. So these 4 paragraphs, based upon material in Sefer Yeshayahu, is from the second half of Yeshayahu, which is talking about the eventual rebuilding of Yerushalayim, the eventual Yemot HaMashiach, and that is a very powerful image that we want to be, part of our poem. Okay? Last 2 paragraphs. Okay. Now, some people attach this paragraph to the previous 4, and it's talking about the marriage that is referred to, by the way, in Sefer Yeshayahu, Kol Chatan v'Kol Kala, Kol Sason v'Kol Simcha, that it'll come back to Yerushalayim, the voices of joy and weddings and singing and dancing, and the kids will be playing in the streets again. I don't think so. I think that this is a reference to Shabbat. We're getting happy now because Shabbat is here, and Shabbat is like a wedding. I'm going to say something about the Middle Ages. Tosfot talks about this. In the Middle Ages, many, many weddings took place. Anybody know what day of the week? What? Friday. Because? Yeah, they were too poor, right? They were too poor to make 2 big meals in the same week. So the wedding meal and the Shabbat meal would coincide. So Shabbat was like a time for wedding and celebration. So this, I believe, is going back to Shabbat, which of course now brings us to the famous, very famous last poem. And I didn't find Nusach Sfard. Does anybody have Nusach Sfard in front of them? Or is everybody Ashkenaz? Ashkenaz. Okay. No, I apologize. I have to do Yimino Smo. Sorry. Yimino Smo Tifrotzi Vet Hashem Taritzi. Okay. Tifrotzi is a reference to what? Spreading out. Anybody know? Come on, it's got to be somebody that goes to Chabad sometimes here. Ufaratsta, Yama V'Ked Matzah Fana V'Negva. Okay, that's the blessing to Yaakov. That what's been going on in world history is we've been contracted, and now we're expanding and going out. And then we can get around and we can be there. And then, of course, Nismecha v'Nagilah. There's an important line. Nismecha means to be spiritually joyous, and Nagilah means to be physically joyous. And we have both. We have, I don't know how to translate them. Nismecha is spiritual joy. Nagilah is physical joy. I mean, you just have to look up. Go to your thesaurus and come up with words for joy, right? And whatever you come up with. Okay. So here we go. Bawi v'shalom ateret ba'ala. Okay. The term ateret ba'ala is a phrase that appears in Mishlei, that a woman, a bride, a woman is the husband's crown. And that the honor of the husband is directly related to the relationship and the support and that the woman and the wife do together. Gam b'simcha u'v'tzahala. In joy and in song. Toch emunei am segula. Now we're referred to as am segula, that this is amongst the emunei. Not everybody's going to make it to this point, guys. It's only those who are the believers. It's only those with the faith that are going to get here. But those who have belief in this, in the system, they are an am segula. What's a segula? Usually we translate it as treasure. It means, I apologize, I just can't help it, okay? This is like Gollum saying, my precious, from Lord of the Rings, okay? My precious. It's something that is so valuable to you that you feel you can't live without it. That's segula. It is something that you've placed on a pedestal. It's something that you've put in the safest place. And I'm trying to remember which of my Rabbi many, many years ago gave me this reminder of it, and it's beautiful. Think of the Hebrew vowel segol, which is a triangle. Something that's a segula is something you put in the middle of that triangle to keep it safe. It's something that you protect because it's so important to you. And that's just a beautiful idea. And we are God's segula when we show the proper emunah, when we show the proper faith, we show the proper belief. And now comes the line, which is based totally on that Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Kuf Yutet, which I mentioned. Boi chala, there's big arguments. You know, how do you bow? What do you do? But if we're up to me, we'd go outside and we'd say, Boi chala. We'd bring Shabbos into the shul with us. That was the original context. But the Sfardim, who learned the Gemara, said Shabbos is not only the kala, okay, it's so they say, Boi chala, Shabbat malchuta. Come, O bride, and come, O Shabbos queen. They put both in there. And for some reason we don't. Remember, there was an argument in the Gemara between Rav Hanina and Rav Yanai whether we're looking at Shabbat as a bride, a beloved, or as a queen. What's the, if you're a king, what's the difference between a queen and a regular wife? She's the number one, okay. Hopefully so is a regular.
Royalty.
She's royalty. She's a partner.
She's what?
A partner. When she's a queen, she's not just your wife, she's your partner.
She's always your partner.
And I hope that's true. And there are two psukim. The first one is in Hosea, and it's very, very important. And it says, today, when we talk about husband and wife, we say Baal v'isha. Now, Baal means master and wife, or master and woman. And he says, someday we're not going to say that anymore. We're going to say, she's going to say Ishi, not Baali, not my master, my man, because the two will be partners. And so the queen idea is recognizing, and when you think of your wife as a queen, which we all should, then it's a partnership. And that's extremely important. Okay? Yes, please.
Queen is more important than the husband.
Sometimes.
Unless he is a king.
Well, we're talking, in those days, there was no such thing. I shouldn't say no. It was very rare in the ancient world that a woman ruled. The queens were always queen consorts. Yeah. That's until the Middle Ages. Although there are famous exceptions. Cleopatra was an exception. There are famous exceptions to it. But generally speaking, the ancient world did not recognize that a woman had the right. They would bypass a woman and go to somebody else in the family. No, what you're saying makes sense in the modern world, but it didn't happen that way in the ancient world. By the way, Judaism doesn't recognize queens as rulers. Rulers, according to you, look. Not many people talk about the laws of kings and queens, but the Rambam does, and the Rambam is very specific that a queen is not the ruler. The queen is the wife of the king. Would that change in the future? I don't want to go there. That's a great discussion, but not for this morning. Okay, because we're starting to run out of time, and I want to explain. Why people think it makes sense for this beautiful song. I mean, I didn't do it justice because I was just parsing it quickly, but I hope you got the gist of what an amazing poem this is. But I want to read to you first of all from Rabbi Sachs. Now, I don't want to say I know Rabbi Sachs well, but I've met him a couple of times, and I read his material. He's an amazing, amazing man, both as a scholar and as a human being. I mean, he's really, really a mensch. So this is what he wrote about those middle paragraphs, talking about Migdash Melech Imlucha, about Yerushalayim. Everyone's got that? This is what we're going to see. He says, sanctuary of the king, royal city. In this and next four verses, the poet speaks of the desolate condition of Jerusalem and the Jewish people in his day. Using language drawn from Isaiah, he turns first to Jerusalem, then to the Jewish people, then to the land of Israel itself, summoning them to shake off their grief and rouse themselves to a new glory. These verses radiate the hope born of faith, the victory of joy over despair. It's a beautiful interpretation. Correct. So what's going on here is these people would say that this is here because in chapter 29, we're talking about the glory, and chapter 92, that we spend Shabbat discussing the glories of God. According to both chapters 29 and 92, we're supposed to spend Shabbat discussing the glories of God. But in both of those poems, what aspect of the glory of God are we discussing? His power in nature. And so this, according to the people that follow the position of Rav Sachs, which I think is the majority of people, that they're saying this belongs here because on Shabbat, we're not just thinking about the glories of God in terms of the trees and the forests and the and the power of nature and all of that, which is wonderful. We're also glorifying the God of history. We see that same glory and power and control and machshava, planning, right, of God, not only in, the physical constants and the rules of biology and all of it. We see that, but we also see it in history. We see God arranging history to make sure that the Jewish nation always survives. So when on Shabbat we're supposed to talk about how marvelous God is, which is what Psalm 29 and 92 are doing, we're also supposed to talk about Jewish history, which is a beautiful idea. And I'm not trying to minimize it. And if that's true, if you accept that as true, then it makes sense for this poem to be here, because it's adding to the material we're supposed to use on Shabbat to discuss the glory of Hashem, right? Which is wonderful, which is a wonderful pshat, and I'm not trying in any way to diminish it. I just don't think it's right. I just don't think it's right.
You don't think it's right that it's here?
Yeah, and I don't think that pshat's right. Now I want to tell you what Rabbi Soloveitchik said. Okay? Okay, so this is the Rav. Mikdash Melech Ir Melucha, sanctuary of the king, royal city. This is very important. Conceptually, the holy temple and Shabbat are similar. They facilitate an encounter with God himself. Shabbat and the temple conceptually are the exact same thing. They are the facilitator of our dialogue with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you come to the temple, you feel, I can talk to God. When you first feel the famous, when you watch Shabbat, when you come into Shabbat, I can talk to God. I can communicate. He goes on. The difference lies only in the dimension, whether we're talking about space or time. In other words, the temple is to our relationship with God in space as Shabbat is to our relationship with God in time. Now, I want you to know the Rav was not the first one to say this, and this idea was expressed in a beautiful, very short book by Avram Yeshua Heschel in the 60s called Shabbat, an Island in Time. And it really, it really expresses very similar. What's funny about this is the Rav is giving a Hasidic pshat. I mean, we don't think of the Rav, as a Chassid. The Rav's Baruch Hashem, a wonderful Litvak. Okay. God wants the Jew to establish both a spatial structure and a temporal structure for his presence. Now, when you bear that in mind, you can start to understand why we don't have the Beit HaMikdash today, but it might be important to daven at certain places that would make the tefillah more conducive. This is perhaps part of the idea of makam kavua for tefillah, right? That you should want to have the same place. Now, the place can help you in your dialogue with Hashem. Okay? That's the place can help. Nothing helps as well as the Beit HaMikdash, but that's why we face the Beit HaMikdash to help us with that issue. Okay? Okay. The Jew who accepts Shabbat finds himself in the same position as the Jew who entered the temple sanctuary. When you step into Shabbat, you entered a new realm. Almost sounds like, the Twilight Zone. Okay? You are in a totally different place in time. And that magic is something we do our best to sustain for the 25 hours or so that we have Shabbat. That's what we're trying to do. Whereas, however, the temple is the place where God resides, and the Jew visits him there on Shabbat, beginning on Friday evening, God pays us a visit. Isn't that beautiful? And this idea is very powerful. And if what the Rav said is correct, and I like it a lot, okay? As a matter of fact, I'm actually, I don't know if you look in the Torah Tidbits, the last few weeks, they've been printing my article, I don't know if you noticed, but my article for Vayakal Pekudei, which will come out, not this week, not Purim, the next article for that is going to be based on this idea that in Vayakal Pekudei, we compare Shabbat and the building of the Beit HaMikdash, the building of the Mishkan. And why do we do that? Because they serve a similar function. That's the Rav shot here, and the Rav gets this from the beginning of Vayakal Pekudei. We have Shabbat, and then we have the Mishkan, and they go together because they accomplish the same thing. It's a very beautiful and powerful idea. Assuming that the Rav is correct, and I like it, then the poem doesn't belong here. The poem doesn't belong here. because it's not talking about the things that we're supposed to describe about the glory of God. It's all talking about what happens when we enter the Shabbat zone. Okay? And that would, to me, make more sense if it were up to, no, look, nobody's asking me, but if it were up to me, I would sing Lecha Dodi at the beginning of Kabbalat Shabbat instead of Yedid Nefesh. Because I believe this, it's letting me know what it means to enter Shabbos. It's like it's telling me, get ready. You're coming into the presence of God. God's on his way to visit you. And that's different than teaching us the things we're supposed to discuss and learn about on Shabbat. It's a different type of idea. They're both beautiful ideas, but I like this one better. And if it were up to me, now that we live in, here in Eretz Yisrael, Medinat Yisrael, the proto-redeemed state, I would love to think that we can go outside and do it. Why not? Why not? When I come to Israel, for 16 years, I was teaching in middle school in Stanford, and we bring the 8th graders here. Many Shabbatot, we'd say Lecha Dodi outside, and then we'd come inside. And it was just beautiful. One year we did it we were in a beautiful hotel on the beach in Netanya. I don't know how they got it. Usually we stay in, in slums. But this was, I don't know if you know the Seasons Hotel in Netanya. It's a beautiful hotel. I can't imagine why they would let us go there. I mean, and besides being expensive, it's like, we lower the value of the hotel by having these scruffy 8th graders there. But we went outside to the beach and said Lecha Dodi. And then we went inside for the rest of it. It's just the way it's supposed to be. And we stayed at the Achsaniya one time on Agron. The one's connected to the Conservative Center, but there's an Achsaniya there. So one year we were staying there, and we went on the roof. We went on the roof to say Lecha Dodi. And it was just, that's the way it's supposed to be. Because we're waiting for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're welcoming HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Shabbat, who are going to be with us for the next 25 hours. And so, so that's the machloket. Whether or not the poem belongs here, and Rav Sachs explains it one way, and I don't think it belongs here, and that's the rub. And okay, so that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to start a very tough job. We're going to do Psalm 104. 104 is long and not an easy psalm. It's Borchi Nafshi. Borchi Nafshi. I want to do it this coming week in preparation for Parshat HaChodesh, for getting ready for Rosh Chodesh Nisan, because the importance of Rosh Chodesh is in this poem. This poem is about how important the Rosh Chodesh system is. That's what it was writing about and talking about. And Be'ezrat Hashem it's going to take a little bit to do it because it's a long poem, but it's a very, very important poem. And it's a shame that nowadays, for various reasons, we don't appreciate the importance of Rosh Chodesh. It's very nice here at the OU Center that they do run Rosh Chodesh programs, but in biblical times, Rosh Chodesh was mamish a holiday, and I think we should do more to celebrate Rosh Chodesh, and that's so we'll start that next week. Be'ezrat Hashem. Everybody should have a Freilich and Purim. So today, Jay, the P stands for Purim.
What has it? PM ends the princess and